Welcome to this explainer, everyone. Today, we're diving into a really wild chemical mystery that's probably hiding right inside your refrigerator or pantry as we speak. We're going to explore the dual Jekyll and Hyde nature of compounds known as biogenic amines. These are essentially microscopic chemical messengers that live both in our food and inside our own bodies. And as you'll see, they have the power to either keep us perfectly healthy or make us incredibly sick. Let's get right into it.
Have you ever eaten a seemingly perfectly good piece of fish, or maybe a fancy slice of aged blue cheese, and out of nowhere, you just start feeling off? Like your skin gets flushed, you get a pounding headache, stomach cramps, maybe even a weird burning sensation in your mouth. But you absolutely knew for a fact you weren't allergic to those foods. It's super baffling and honestly pretty scary, but it happens a lot more often than you might think. The thing is, the culprit usually isn't an allergy at all.
So, here's our game plan for today. We're going to start by unmasking this so-called food allergy imposter. Then, we'll actually meet these biogenic amines, look at how microbes completely transform our food, identify the common culprits hiding in your kitchen, and finally, wrap up with the health effects and toxicity.
All right, part 1, the food allergy imposter.
It's a really bizarre phenomenon. Because the symptoms look absolutely identical to a real food allergic reaction, it gets misdiagnosed all the time. When people get hit by these compounds, their body basically hits the panic button, acting like it's under a massive allergic attack. But here's the kicker. There's no true immune system allergy happening. Zero. What we're actually dealing with is a direct chemical intoxication. And to figure out how that works, we need to meet the chemicals responsible.
Moving on to Section 2, meet the biogenic amines. Let's establish the baseline science and look at the Dr. Jekyll side of our story, where these compounds are actually completely essential for our survival.
So what are biogenic amines, or BAs for short? Basically, they are biologically active organic compounds that are naturally found in animals, humans, and a whole bunch of different foods. And I want to be super clear here. Under normal, healthy conditions, these little guys are absolutely nothing to be afraid of. Actually, our bodies are constantly making them to keep all of our biological systems running smoothly.
Now, don't let the chemistry table freak you out. It's actually pretty straightforward. These biogenic amines, things like histamine, tyramine, putrescine, and cadaverine, they don't just magically appear out of thin air. They are built from specific free amino acids, which, are just the basic building blocks of proteins. So, for example, the amino acid histamine turns into histamine. Tyrosine becomes tyramine. They're literally just slightly tweaked versions of basic nutrients, categorized by their chemical shapes, like heterocyclic or aromatic.
And we actually need them to function. Our bodies manufacture these compounds to do some really heavy lifting. They drive cell growth, they're absolutely vital for maturing a newborn baby's gut, they regulate our immune system, and they mediate hormones and growth factors. Histamine itself, it acts as a crucial neurotransmitter in our brains and nervous system. So the big takeaway is that our bodies keep these internal chemical messengers on a very tight leash because we literally cannot live without them. But what happens when we swallow a massive, unregulated dose of them from our environment?
That brings us to Section 3. How microbes transform food. This is the Mr. Hyde shift. Let's look at how outside forces turn these harmless nutritional building blocks into something highly toxic right inside our food.
So here's how this transformation actually goes down. It starts when you have free amino acids just hanging out in protein-rich foods like fish or meat. Now, if certain bacteria get in there, specifically microbes armed with something called decarboxylating enzymes, and the environmental conditions like temperature are just right for them to rapidly grow, they go to work. Through a process called enzymatic decarboxylation, these bacteria essentially snip off a tiny specific part of the amino acid, instantly transforming it into a biogenic amine.
And this microbial action explains a massive contradiction in the way we eat. Think about fermented foods for a second. Wine, aged cheese, soy sauce. In those foods, the presence of these biogenic amines is totally expected. We literally use bacterial processes on purpose to create those distinct flavors. But flip that over to non-fermented foods like fresh fish or raw meat. If you find high levels of biogenic amines there, it is a massive, flashing red flag. It tells us without a doubt that the food is actively spoiling, even if it doesn't quite smell bad yet.
All right, Section 4. Common culprits and sources. Where exactly are these compounds lurking in our everyday diets?
Biogenic amines have been widely documented in a bunch of our everyday kitchen staples. The big ones are fish, particularly what we call scumbroid fish. So that's your tuna, mackerel, herring, and sardines. But they also heavily populate fermented meat products like dry sausages, and of course, aged dairy like blue cheese.
And the levels we're talking about can be absolutely staggering. While dry sausages might hit around 800 milligrams per kilogram and a raw milk blue cheese tops out just over 1,000, smoked mackerel and canned tuna have been clocked at up to 20,000 milligrams per kilogram of histamine and other amines. I mean, that is just a massive biochemical payload waiting in the meat. The variability between fresh food and mishandled food is incredibly high.
Yet, despite those extreme examples out there, we are constantly processing these compounds every single day. The data shows that the high end of the estimated average daily intake of just histamine alone can be up to 177 milligrams per day for a normal consumer. So your body is doing a ton of invisible work behind the scenes to manage all of this daily intake.
Which leads us perfectly into our final segment, Section 5, Health Effects and Toxicity. What exactly happens when we push our bodies past their limits and cross that toxicity threshold?
First off, let me reassure you a bit. Under normal conditions, assuming your intake isn't astronomically high, a healthy human gut handles this beautifully. The biogenic amines you ingest go through a process called oxidative deamination. Basically, specific enzymes in your digestive tract convert them into totally harmless acids, which are then safely excreted in your urine. Your body is essentially diffusing the bomb long before it ever has a chance to go off.
However, there is a very critical, very dangerous drug interaction that you absolutely need to know about. People taking monoamine oxidase inhibitors, often called MAOIs, which are certain types of antidepressants, are highly susceptible to biogenic amine toxicity. And the reason why is pretty simple. Those medications directly block the exact enzymes your gut uses to disarm the amines. Without that built-in defense mechanism, even the tyramine in a normal slice of aged cheese can trigger a really dangerous spike in blood pressure.
Now, if you lack those enzymes, or if you just eat a heavily spoiled piece of scumbroid fish loaded with 20,000 milligrams of histamine, that defense completely breaks down. The result is commonly called scumbroid poisoning, and man, it hits hard. We're talking sudden vomiting, diarrhea, intense abdominal cramps, rapid perspiration and flushing of the skin, severe migraines, and that really distinct burning or peppery sensation in the mouth. It mimics a severe allergic reaction perfectly. And to make matters worse, studies show that smoking and alcohol consumption can actually amplify these toxic effects.
But I want to leave you with this incredibly fascinating scientific twist. Researchers found out that if you give a human a massive dose of pure, isolated histamine, it actually doesn't cause those severe ill effects of scumbroid poisoning. Isn't that wild? It turns out histamine isn't just acting as a lone villain. The severe toxicity actually requires a synergistic, coordinated attack by the microbes. The spoilage bacteria are brewing up a cocktail of different amines, lovely things with names like putrescine and cadaverine, right alongside the histamine. And together, as a team, they overwhelm your body's defenses in a way pure histamine simply cannot do by itself.
Which brings us to our final thought. We've seen how absolutely essential these compounds are to human life, but also how unbelievably fast bacteria can weaponize them right inside our food. Knowing all about this Jekyll and Hyde chemistry, what microscopic battles are happening in your leftovers right now? It definitely makes you think twice about how carefully you store your fresh fish and meats, doesn't it? Gotta respect the invisible microbial chemistry happening in your kitchen, folks. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and stay curious.